Okay, so within the span of about 72 hours, the entire mood around this team flipped upside down, then flipped right back again, and if you blinked, you probably missed all of it. One roster got quietly rearranged, one body went down in a way nobody saw coming, and one young player did something at Wrigley Field on Monday night that literally has never been done before in the history of this franchise. Three separate storylines, all colliding in the same week, right when this team can least afford chaos. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why front office phones have been ringing nonstop since Sunday. So stay with me, because we're unpacking every single piece of it in order, starting right now. But before I get into it, quick thing. This is genuinely one of the first videos on this channel, so if you're new here, welcome. You picked a wild week to show up. And I want to actually ask you something instead of just talking at you for the next few minutes. How long have you actually been riding with this team? Are we talking lifelong, since Wrigley still smelled like the 90s type of fan? Or did you jump on somewhat recently and you're still learning the names? Drop it in the comments. And while you're down there, tell me which city or country you're watching this from, because I've noticed this fan base reaches way further than just the north side of Chicago, and I want to actually see how far this thing stretches. Now here's the honest pitch, no fluff. If you are a real one, if this team actually matters to you and you want the fastest possible breakdown every single time something like this happens, hit that subscribe button right now before you forget, because this channel is building a community specifically for that. People who want the real reaction, not the delayed take 3 days later. It costs you nothing. It takes 2 seconds, and it means you're in the room for whatever happens next, which, trust me, is going to be a lot given where this season is heading. Okay, with that said, let's actually get into what happened. So let's set the table first, because context matters here. This team sits at 74-53 right now, holding second place in the NL Central, about 4 games back of Milwaukee, who honestly have just been a wagon all year and don't look like they're slowing down anytime soon. But here's the thing. Second place in that division still puts Chicago in very strong position for a wildcard spot, and with roughly 6 weeks left on the calendar, this is exactly the stretch where every single roster decision gets magnified times 10, which is why what happened over the weekend hit as hard as it did. It started with Dansby Swanson during Sunday's game against St. Louis. Cameras caught him in visible discomfort after a swing, and you could see it immediately. The kind of wince that makes every fan in the building go quiet for a second. Turns out it was an oblique strain, and the team confirmed he was headed to the 10-day injured list. Now, if you know anything about oblique injuries in baseball, you know they are sneaky. Sometimes a guy is back in 10 days. Sometimes that 10-day stint quietly becomes 3 weeks because oblique strains do not like being rushed, especially for a guy who plays shortstop and needs full rotational strength on both his swing and his throws across the diamond. Losing your everyday shortstop and one of your veteran leadership voices in the middle of a playoff push is never just a small footnote. It changes the entire look of the infield. It changes the lineup construction, and honestly, it puts a little more weight on some of the younger guys to step up without him in the room. And here's what made the timing especially rough. That same weekend, the Cardinals came into Wrigley and just took it to Chicago, winning 11-4 in the series and honestly making a statement while they did it. So you had the injury and a tough loss basically landing on top of each other. Not exactly the momentum you want heading into a huge crosstown classic against the White Sox. But, and this is where the story completely flips. Monday night happened. The Cubs hosted the White Sox at Wrigley in front of an absolutely electric crowd, the kind of energy you only get in a true rivalry game, and Pete Crow-Armstrong basically decided he was going to be the entire storyline of the night. He led off the bottom of the first with a home run, his 29th of the season, which is already a ridiculous number for a guy his age. Then the game gets tight, goes back and forth, ties up at 5-5, and it rolls all the way into extra innings, bottom of the 10th. And Crow-Armstrong steps up again and just ends it. Walk-off 2-run homer, his 30th of the year, and the place absolutely erupts. Fans were chanting his initials before the Cubs even played the walk-off video on the scoreboard. That's how sure everyone in that building was of what was about to happen. And that home run wasn't just a walk-off. That was homer number 30 to go with 31 stolen bases, meaning Crow-Armstrong hit the 30-30 club. 30 homers, 30 steals in a single season. And here's the part that should genuinely blow your mind if you didn't already know it. No player in the history of the Chicago Cubs franchise had ever done that before. Not once. Not in over 150 years of this organization. And to make it even more absurd, this is back-to-back seasons of that kind of production for him. 24 years old, doing something completely unprecedented in a Cubs uniform, on a walk-off in a crosstown rivalry game with the crowd already chanting his name before he even swung. You could not script that better if you tried. And honestly, at this point, the MVP conversation around him is not some fringe take anymore. It's a legitimate conversation league-wide. Nico Horner also deserves a mention from that same game because he quietly went 4 for 5 with 2 RBI, including the game-tying single in the ninth that even set up the extra innings drama in the first place. Since the All-Star break specifically, Horner has been putting together one of the most underrated stretches on the entire roster, and this team does not get to Monday's walk-off moment without his at-bat first. Now, here's the piece that connects everything back to that something changed idea from the top of the video, because roster moves didn't stop at the Swanson injury. Edward Cabrera, who the front office had acquired in a big offseason trade specifically because of his top-of-the-rotation ceiling, finally made his return from a left hamstring strain after missing close to 2 months. And it did not go the way anyone hoped. He lasted just 3 2/3 innings, gave up 7 runs on 6 hits and 3 walks, and his ERA on the season is now sitting up at 5.68 with a 1.45 xAIEP. Manager Craig Counsell was noticeably non-committal afterward about whether Cabrera keeps his rotation spot or gets shifted somewhere else, which, if you read between the lines, tells you the coaching staff themselves aren't fully sure what version of this guy they're going to get right now. Shortly after, Cabrera was moved to the 60-day injured list in what looked like a procedural move, opening up a roster spot, and Owen Miller had his contract selected up from AAA Iowa to fill the gap. So in the span of a few days, you've got your starting shortstop down, your big trade acquisition starter shuffled onto a longer-term IL stint, and a fresh face getting the call-up from the minors. That is a genuinely different-looking roster than the one that started the week. And look, I'll give you my honest read on all of this, because I don't think it's as simple as panic or everything's fine. The Swanson injury is the one to actually watch closely over the next week or two, because a shortstop who can't fully rotate is a shortstop who shouldn't be rushed back. And if this front office is smart, they let that 10-day window play out fully rather than gambling with a setback in September. The Cabrera situation, honestly, feels less like a crisis and more like a front office being honest with themselves about what he currently is versus what they hoped he'd be when they traded for him. Sometimes a top-of-the-rotation arm needs an extra runway, and pretending otherwise in the middle of a playoff race is how you lose games you shouldn't. But the Crow-Armstrong moment, that's the one that tells you the ceiling on this roster is still enormous. You do not accidentally become the first player in franchise history to go 30-30 back-to-back on a walk-off in a rivalry game. That's a guy carrying a team on his back in real time. There's also been some noise online around that same walk-off moment. A clip circulating of a fan appearing to shove another fan out of the way while going for Crow-Armstrong's home run ball, and it's understandably drawn a lot of criticism across social media. Not exactly the kind of attention any fan base wants attached to a historic moment, and it's worth remembering that as electric as these games get, there's still a way to act in that building. So where does this actually leave the team heading forward? Chicago wraps up this White Sox series today, then heads out west for a 3-game set against Seattle, followed by a trip down to Arizona to face the Diamondbacks. That's a real road stretch against real competition, and it's coming at exactly the moment this roster is adjusting to missing its shortstop. If the bats stay hot the way they looked Monday night, and if the bullpen can hold steady without leaning too hard on arms that are already stretched thin, this team is still very much built for a serious October run. But the next 2 weeks are going to tell us a lot more than any single game has so far this season. I want to hear where you land on this. Are you more worried about the Swanson injury than I'm making it sound? Or do you think this team has enough depth to absorb it without missing a beat? And be honest, did the Crow-Armstrong walk-off make you forget about the rough Cardinals series entirely? Or are you still a little uneasy heading into this road trip? Drop your actual take in the comments, not just "Let's go Cubs." I want the real opinions. And hey, one more time before you go. If this is your first time landing on this channel, seriously, consider sticking around. This is a brand new channel built specifically for people who want their Cubs news fast, honest, and without the fluff. And every subscribe right now genuinely helps this thing grow into exactly that. So hit subscribe, turn on notifications if you don't want to miss the next update, and drop a comment so I know you were actually here for the beginning of this. I'll be back the second something else moves. Until then, that's everything. That's the update. Go Cubs.